All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're digging into a pretty incredible legal showdown where a single homeowner decided to take on some major corporate buyers. And this wasn't just any fight. It went all the way to the Idaho Supreme Court. What this case really does is pull back the curtain on how modern foreclosure works, and it makes you ask some really big questions about what justice even means in our system.
So, at the very center of all of this is the homeowner, Jeremy Bass. And his own words here really tell you everything you need to know. For him, this was never just about four walls and a roof. It's about his entire life savings, his whole financial future, and really just this basic idea of getting a fair shake. So let's meet the players, shall we? On one side, you've got Jeremy Bass, an individual homeowner. And on the other side, DPW Enterprises and Mountain Prime. These are corporate buyers, companies whose entire business model is to snap up properties at foreclosure auctions. It really is the classic David versus Goliath story.
So you have to be asking, how did this whole thing blow up? I mean, how does a pretty standard foreclosure auction end up becoming this huge legal battle that lands in front of the state's highest court? To get that, we've got to look at how it all went down.
Things moved fast. I mean, incredibly fast. After that foreclosure sale, the corporate buyers didn't waste a single second. On March 20th, they physically took possession of the house. And then, get this, just 1 week later, they file a motion with the Supreme Court to just toss out the homeowner's appeal altogether. Their argument? The fight's already over.
Now, what the corporate buyers did here, it actually has a name. Legal pros call it the dispossess to dismiss playbook. And the strategy is brutally simple. Grab the asset first, in this case the house, then turn around and tell the judge, hey, we've got the property, so there's literally nothing left to argue about. Case closed.
And look, you don't have to take my word for it. This is straight from their own court filing. They put it in black and white for the court. They said, possession has been obtained, so the appeal is moot. They're basically saying, we won. Game over.
So the stage is set, right? The homeowner is physically out of his house. The corporate buyers are in control, and everyone is just holding their breath, waiting to see what the state's highest court is going to do about this super aggressive legal tactic. And the court's answer, well, it was a real head-scratcher for a lot of people. It was this nuanced three-part decision. First, they denied the homeowner's emergency requests. They weren't going to stop the eviction or waive the fees. But then, and this is the big one, they also denied the corporate buyer's motion to dismiss the entire case.
So let's break that down. While Boss didn't get his house back right away, that was a tactical loss for sure. That final denial from the court, that was a huge strategic victory. The court basically said, not so fast. Just because you have the keys doesn't mean you get to dodge the legal questions here. They kept the case alive. Okay, so this is where things get really interesting, because the court's refusal to just kill the case, well, that decision has ripples that go way, way beyond this one house. It gets to the heart of the balance of power in every single foreclosure case. And to really understand the stakes here, you have to hear how one legal expert, Professor Eleanor Blackwood, described it. She said, calling a case moot isn't just some legal technicality. It's a jurisdictional guillotine. It would have just completely chopped off the homeowner's right to even make his arguments. And you have to understand the backdrop for all this. This ruling is so important because of what's happening in the market. As you can see here, corporate buyers are just dominating foreclosure auctions now. We're talking nearly 70% of all purchases. That is a massive change from how things used to be. And here's another key piece of the puzzle. It's not just who is buying, it's why these homes are even in foreclosure in the first place. Data from the CFPB shows that almost 40% of these cases aren't just simple, I couldn't pay my mortgage situations anymore. They involve these messy, complicated procedural fights. Think servicer errors or big disputes over loan modifications. Which brings us to the absolute core of this appeal, the most jaw-dropping part of the whole story. The Supreme Court didn't just save some boring case. They kept the door open for some truly explosive claims to finally see the light of day. So, what was it? What was this bombshell claim that was so important that the Idaho Supreme Court had to make sure it got heard, even after the homeowner had already been kicked out of his own house? It all boils down to this absolutely mind-boggling number, 1 in 244 million. According to a statistical analysis in the court filings, those were the odds of these specific corporate buyers winning 12 straight auctions by sheer luck. Look, When you see a number like that, it screams one thing, and it's not good luck. A statistical anomaly that wild points right at the possibility of bid rigging. And let's be clear, that's not just frowned upon, it's an illegal conspiracy to manipulate auctions, and it's a federal felony. So now that his appeal is alive and kicking, Bass gets to make his full case. He's arguing there was a defective foreclosure notice, that the trustee engaged in misconduct, and most critically, he's fighting to protect the nearly $300,000 of equity, his equity, that was in that home. You see, that Supreme Court decision wasn't the end of the story, not by a long shot. It was really just the beginning of a whole new chapter. A high-stakes fight where these fundamental questions about fairness and property are going to be front and center. And when you strip everything else away, for Jeremy Boss, it all comes down to this one number: $300,000. That's the amount of home equity, his life savings really, that he says was just wiped out by a process that was fundamentally broken and unfair. What this case really puts under a microscope is this incredible conflict. On the one hand, you have a person trying to protect everything they've worked for, and on the other hand, you have a corporation that has a legal obligation, a fiduciary duty to its investors to make as much money as possible and make legal problems go away as fast as possible. And that's the bigger picture here. This one case kind of forces us to look in the mirror and ask what we value more. Do our legal and financial systems prioritize efficiency, just moving assets and money around as quickly as possible? Or do we prioritize substantive justice, the right for every single person to get a full, fair hearing? By keeping this appeal alive, the Idaho Supreme Court basically hit the pause button. They sent a message that this question, in our race for an efficient market, what is the actual cost of one person's right to be heard? Well, for now, that question is still very much up for debate.